Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you for joining us. Hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with Abe Minkara of the Mark Cuban Companies. Abe, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Hall. Thanks for having me.
Well, Abe, can you tell us about your current role there at Mark Cuban Companies and what you guys do?
Yes, currently I'm a director at Mark Cuban Companies, and I'm part of a group that manage Mark's early stage investments. So he's got over 150 of those aside from kind of his larger investments like the Mavericks and Access TV. And if you want to kind of simplify the projects we work on, 50% of those are early stage tech, and the other 50% are early stage consumer products. And almost 95% of our consumer product portfolio came through Shark Tank. So that's where we get most of our deals for CPG.
And what was your background before coming into this stage?
I have a background in technology, computer engineering. Then I did a master's in business and finance. I worked, even ventured in the entrepreneurial space. I had a startup for 2 years in the CPG space, then worked business consulting for manufacturing, private equity, and then ended up with Mark. The timing was right. It was right after his third season where he started accumulating a lot of CPG brands, and that's where he was putting together a team to help support these brands. So it was right timing and being at the right place, right time, and being able to deliver when that happened.
Well, that's great. Well, it seems like most of your startups come through Shark Tank. Can you tell us more about the process you use in finding startups through that program?
Yeah, so just the background for some of the listeners here. The way Shark Tank works is the Shark Tank producers go out and scout those companies through either some that get to them directly online, or they go to trade shows, or they go to every major city, almost like American Idol does, scouting for talent and companies. And then they narrow down from 40,000 applicants, they narrowed down to 200, and they bring those companies to the studio in LA in June. That's where they have all the sharks there, and they have them in the studios from morning to night, pitch after pitch. Sharks have no idea who's walking in through those doors, and that's how the deals happen. It's unscripted. What you see on TV is a 5-minute pitch. In reality, it's an hour, sometimes 2 hours. And then what happens is when the handshake deal happens, as you see on TV, that's when the real due diligence happens. So every Shark Tank has their own team, and every team has their own kind of standard for doing due diligence. And usually it takes us about 3 months to go through that phase until we close on a company, which is perfect timing because those companies that pitch in June start airing on the new season end of September, October. So there's enough time to start working with those entrepreneurs, making sure they have a website that doesn't crash when they air on the show. They have the right pricing strategy, anything else we can help them with, especially inventory. You know, inventory is one of the most challenging things for a CPG brand, right? Especially if you have a big event and there's a cost of inventory. You don't want to buy too much inventory, and you don't want to not have any at all. And so it's always interesting to see what entrepreneurs do. If it's made in a USA product, you have more flexibility with, having a back order strategy versus if you're making your products in China, communicating to your customers that their product's going to take another 2 to 3 months to get delivered is more challenging than a couple of weeks, right?
So what do you look for in an entrepreneur that's coming through that program? What do you think distinguishes those that get an investment from Mark Cuban and those that don't?
So Mark has, at the end of the day, it's you being able to sell to Mark when you're face to face with him on the show. It's your ability to show him how well you understand your business. Obviously, you have to know the numbers, right? They say that on the show. You have to come prepared. So if you're prepared every aspect of your business, and you as a founder, CEO, as your main job, you always have your selling hat on. He wants to see founders who are not just innovators, but also great salesmen. If all you do, you got to sell. And, Mark says, sales cure all. So that's one of the things that he looks for is your ability to push and sell. And the other aspects, obviously, is just the team. Are you, if you're a single founder, or do you have a team around you? And if you do, understanding the strength of your team. But the most important thing, aside from the strength of the entrepreneur or the organization as a group, is the product and the idea and the market opportunity, right? Is what you're creating is going to be disruptive in the market, yes or no? If it is, then you've got Mark's attention.
Can you talk about a startup you funded that really struck you most that met those criteria?
A company that met those criteria? Yeah, there's a company called Simple Sugars. So Lainey Lazari, Simple Sugar Scrub, she makes her own sugar scrubs, and she made that product out of a need. She had rosacea, and she couldn't find a product that could solve her skin problem. So she did a lot of research on her own when she was 13, 14 years old. And she started experimenting and found that, mixing essential oils with sugar and making a scrub out of it was actually the best solution she could find do for her skin. And so she started creating those products. It worked for her. And then from that, it started evolving through for friends and family. And next thing, she had a website. And when she got on the show, she was 17. She was doing 70,000 in sales just from selling sugar scrubs out of her kitchen. So the fact that she was able to accomplish all that at 17, so she was able to sell product, create her own product, identify a market, and then her delivery on the show was exceptional. She knew her customers. That was also key. And that's what sold Mark. And that company actually made, within the first 48 hours from airing on the show, almost close to 400,000. And she did 600,000 within the first week. And she closed that year at over $2 million in sales. So from $70,000 to over $2 million within less than a year. Pretty impressive.
Well, that's great. That's fantastic growth there. And I'm sure the show had a tremendous part in that. When I watch the show, it all seems like it goes by in a nanosecond, but I know fundraising really doesn't happen so fast. What is the due diligence process like when people say, yeah, I want to invest in you? What happens after the show's over?
You mean after the show, after they air, or after the investment happens?
Well, after they air, and then they're now going to get ready to actually make the investment. They say, yeah, I want to invest in you. What happens between that and when they actually do make the investment? What does the process look like?
So we do our best. We have our kind of standard due diligence list, and our intent is to close the deal as long as everything checks out, right? So there are some cases where some entrepreneurs, we've had deals that don't close because either the entrepreneurs are not responsive, they're just dragging the whole process. Maybe they don't have an intention of making a deal. They're just on the show to get the advertising. You have a few of those. In some cases, the financials don't necessarily match what they claim on the show, and so that's a red flag. In very few cases, let's say there's a lawsuit that wasn't disclosed, and so that's a red flag. But overall, as long as they provide all the information that we ask for in terms of just all of the docs and all of the financials, I think everything should go smoothly. And once we close on the deal, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, they get their funds and we get our equity, and usually we do a convertible note. And in most cases, we convert within a year or 2 years. Usually, the event that triggers it is these companies, since they're making, within the first year of airing, they're adding to their top line, at least from the show, $1 million or more, and then through other channels from the exposure as well. So a lot of those companies do profit sharing, and as a result of that distribution, we do actually convert. So that's kind of the process. Now, what happens after the show, as you know, the exposure from the first event is so huge, all the other events that happen after don't compare to it. So even though the show re-airs, they still get a big bump online, but it's nothing compared to the first airing of the show.
Absolutely. Well, it seems like most of these are in the consumer product goods space, so you guys have a front row seat in that industry. What do you think are the challenges in investing in consumer product goods, food, beverage, and otherwise?
So the challenge is the whole landscape is changing. It's not a one-size-fits-all anymore. As a brand, you really have to understand who your customer is and how you can reach your customers. So as a brand, your strategy for, let's say, if you're an F&B brand versus a consumer tech brand versus if you're a durable, non-durable, you really have to identify who you are and really know who you are as a brand, and then identify all of the channels where you can connect with your customers. So obviously, in today's world, connecting directly to your customer via your website, via social media that goes back to your website is key. And since the brands we invest in are through Shark Tank, so direct-to-consumer strategy is the most obvious one. This is a big event they have to be ready for. So their website is always one of their largest channels for connecting and selling. Beyond that, there are other channels. And what we advise our brands is really have a specific strategy per channel. You know, what you sell online doesn't necessarily have to be the same assortment of products that you sell in brick and mortar or on Amazon. So we have companies that sell exclusive product just to Amazon that they don't sell on their website and they don't sell in brick and mortar. And in brick and mortar, they have other exclusive products. That incentivizes and builds a partnership with each one of your channels. So we've seen that strategy happen recently. And if you, as a brand, if you're flexible enough, you have the ability to cater specific types of products to each separate channel, then you have a winning strategy for growth.
So as an investor in this space, where do you see the risk in this space? You know, in technology, there's the risk the technology doesn't work. Consumer, it seems like the risk there is low, but where is the risk high in the CPG space?
There are two. I mean, if you want to look at it from early stage CPG, it's definitely more riskier to go into, let's say, the durable goods versus kind of the consumables. What we're seeing now is in the F&B and wellness space, there's recently been a lot of exits at crazy valuations. So that's creating a buzz in the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the early stage investment community for the next big home run when it comes to healthy foods and wellness. On the consumer tech side, since we have investments in both of those categories, it's a little bit more challenging. And what we're seeing is strategies shifting more direct to consumer versus brick and mortar. We have one company called Power Practical. They sell lighting strips, battery packs, all kinds of connected power solutions. And they used to sell at brick and mortar stores, I'm not going to mention which ones, but they've noticed a significant decrease in sales. And based on their projections, this was 3 years ago, they could definitely see that if they kept following that strategy for increasing their brick and mortar partners, eventually they're going to run out of cash and they won't be able to maintain the business as it is. So they made a big decision and they pivoted to their sales channels and they decided to go 100% online, which includes Amazon. So over time, they built a relationship with Amazon and they started selling products exclusively on Amazon. And that turned the company around. Their margins are better. They actually can know their consumer now because they're connecting directly with their consumers. And another strategy they've been doing in that direct-to-consumer space is they're using crowdfunding to experiment when they launch new products. So they would use Kickstarter, in some cases Indiegogo, but mainly Kickstarter to launch a product. And by doing so, they're engaging with, every time they launch a Kickstarter, they're providing something new to their Kickstarter followers, and they're gaining new Kickstarter followers as well. And then they're converting all these to eventually customers that will buy on their website and on Amazon. And that became their model, is they innovate, push products. Right now they're doing 3 new products a year that they push through Kickstarter. And Kickstarter, when you look at it, it's no longer what we used to think about crowdfunding when it first started. It's not necessarily for companies that need money, but it's also a strategy for getting pre-sales for a new product. And that's what they do. So they launch on Kickstarter, they validate the product, get pre-sales, and then they go direct to consumer 100% online on Amazon, and they do that over and over, and they've been very successful at it.
So you talked about two sectors, healthy food and wellness, as being hot areas. What are the other immediate or hot areas you see out there in the CPG space?
So just based on our portfolio, definitely the F&B and wellness, and I mentioned simple sugars, that's another hot space as well. Personal care and beauty is another category that's seeing incredible growth. And why? It's because the margins are high, and the direct-to-consumer strategy works between Amazon and online and other direct-to-consumer strategies. It's a very visual product. QVC used to be, and it still is, a great platform for connecting with your consumers for beauty and personal care products. For example, if you go back a couple of years, the number one selling product in QVC for several years in a row was Clarisonic, which is kind of a device. It's a face scrub. It's a Sonicare face scrub in a way. So the market is there, and that was a channel for connecting. So QVC now, with just digital media, is becoming, every channel online is becoming a mini QVC in its way. Instagram launched IGTV, you have YouTube, you have Facebook Live, even Amazon now has a live program almost like QVC. So connecting with a consumer and being able to, these are products that the consumer doesn't necessarily have to touch. As long as they see before and after, it's definitely a hook, and you got them. So that's the other category that we see that it's actually now as interesting to us as the health and wellness space.
Well, in the last few minutes we have here today, what else should we cover?
What else should we cover? Good question. Season 10 starts this year. So there's a season 10 for Shark Tank that starts end of September. So make sure you tune into that one, and you'll see a lot of the new brands that Mark invested in. So I can't say what they are. Everything's confidential until that point, but I can tell you that we have companies that are currently going through due diligence right now, and in a variety of categories. So it's definitely going to be a great season, and there are going to be some of the great guest sharks from last year are going to be there this year as well.
That's great. So how best should listeners get back in touch with you?
The best way to connect with me would be through LinkedIn. So if you just search for Abe Minkara, Minkara, just connect with me with LinkedIn, and that would be the easiest way.
Well, we'll put that in the show notes as well as the website, and appreciate your taking time today, and hope to have you back for a follow-up real soon.
Will do. Thank you. Bye.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.